I'm Jerry Crow with the Pacifica Historical Society and host of Footprints of Pacifica, where we get together every week to explore and discover the lure and lore of lovely Pacifica, its character and its characters. The focus of today's show has long been a significant part of the evolution of Pacifica, Cal Hinton. In recent times, he's been well known as a member of the City Council, and prior to that as Fire Chief, but he's done many other things that we're going to learn about here on the show. Welcome to the show, Cal. Let's start with your life before you came to Pacifica. Like many Pacificans, you were not a native Californian. Where did you begin?
Thank you, Jerry. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I was born in Chicago. Chicago, as they say back there. And I lived there 3 months, and my mother moved back, and I and my dad, we moved back to Indiana, where my mother was from, northern Indiana, just on the southern shore of Lake Michigan. You can see Chicago across the lake. So it's almost like being in Pacifica as relates to San Francisco. I went to high school there in 1942. We had a state championship football team, and I graduated. And then I had an offer I couldn't refuse. It included a Pacific cruise. I went into the Marine Corps, and then I came home in 1946, and eventually I ended up out here. I'll tell you how it happened. Doc Blanchard and Glenn Davis were on the all-star team. They were practicing at Northwestern, and one of my friends that I went to play football with in high school was a center for the University of Georgia. Wally Butts, Marcy Schwartz from Stanford were the assistant coaches, and Frank Leahy was the head coach. We went up to watch him practice, and a friend of mine wanted to come to Stanford. As far as I knew, Stanford was in Connecticut. And he was talking to Marcy Schwartz, and he was a little heavy guy, and I was lean and mean just out of the Marine Corps, and Marcy looking at me, and he said, we can offer you a hashing job when you get out there. And I had a GI Bill, so I'd gone with a girl in high school, and she'd moved to Pasadena, and I thought, gee, that'll be real handy. I can see her on the weekend, Little did I know that California was as big as it was, and that's what 400 or 500 miles, so that didn't work out. And I came out to Stanford, played football, and then...
What was your position?
I was tackle. I was too slow to be anything else. And in the meantime, when I first got home, they called me and said, you can join the inactive reserve, and you won't lose your rank, and you don't have to go to meetings because they're way up in Chicago. And so when I got back in 1970, Korea had come about. And
1950.
Oh, did I say 70? Yeah. Okay. Well, time flies. In 1950. And the inactive reserve became very active. So I got called back for Korea.
Yeah.
And then when I got home from Korea, got through with that, I came back out here to Stanford, and I'm here. I was working the post office in San Francisco and going to the University of San Francisco at night. Mm-hmm. And came down here to play golf and found out about the homes they were building. And with my family, I decided that I needed a home. And we came down here on June the 10th, 1954, and bought a home on Hermosa Drive. Been here ever since. I don't know if I'll stay, but...
Seems like a pretty good possibility.
Yeah. So, I don't know where, Jerry, this is my home. I don't know where else I would go. I love it here.
You can't beat it. So tell me about how you got into the firefighting business.
Oh, the fellow across the street asked me if I wanted to be a volunteer fireman. Boy, that sounded like more fun than anything else, And I joined the volunteer fire department, and things went to hell from there. I became the chief.
Well, there were a lot of developments, I guess. We've got a few pictures. Maybe you can walk us through the early days and how things became what they are now.
I'd be happy to. Andy Odstead was building Lindemar, and in order to qualify for FHA loans, he had to have fire protection. And the North Coast County Fire Protection District was present in Sharp Park, and they had a volunteer fire department in Valley Mar and one on Pedro Point. And so they incorporated Lindemar into the North Coast County Fire District. It consisted of Sharp Park, Pacific Manor, the highway, and then Lindemar. That was the fire district. And eventually it was a county funded. They paid taxes through the county, and they had control of most things. So it eventually evolved into when it became a city, everybody was paying taxes to support the fire department. So Pedro Point decided that they would just dissolve their fire district, and so did Valleymar, and they became part of the North Coast County Fire District.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have a picture of the first.
Yeah, right here.
That's before my time. That's
okay.
No, that's all right. That truck was called Old Betsy. I never did. It was gone by the time I got here, but it was the first one that the volunteer firemen bought, and it was Old Betsy. You can see it was quite elderly.
And did they raise all the money themselves? Or
Jerry was before my time. I wouldn't.
Oh, okay. I remember some people saying there were a lot of whist parties.
Oh yes, they used to play
put
whist
together
in the old firehouse. It was on the corner of Santa Maria and Palmetto. It was on the northeast corner.
Yeah.
And I think you have a picture there later on.
So let's see.
That's the Valleymar Fire Department.
Oh, okay. Did that engine have a name too?
I don't know. I never did get involved with them. They gave it up shortly after I arrived. Not because of me, but because.
Well, you must have ushered in the modern era. So.
That's the fire station was on the corner of Palmetto and Santa Maria. Those are the three. There was 4 people in the department when I was hired. Gene Girdler on the right was a chief. The next one is Ed Greer, Danny Lynch, and Eddie Girdler. Mm-hmm. They were lieutenants because they had to have a rank as an officer to handle the volunteers, and this one here was the newest engine. That was really a good engine at the time, and this one was an old airport rescue truck, and it didn't have much in the way of brakes. And I remember one time coming off the Crespi Cut, and we weren't sure we were going to stop in Rockaway. And this was our rescue truck that we used to do the cliff rescues with. This is a nice Mack truck. That's a beautiful engine. It didn't have any water, but it was 500 gallons per minute. It's been restored, and it's still at the Lindenmar Fire Station, I believe. At least it was last I heard.
So I guess most. Oh, go ahead, please.
And this tower was built during the war for beach watching. They tell me.
Mm-hmm. And they hung hose to dry, I suppose. Also.
No.
Really?
It didn't. It wasn't hollow. It had 2 floors and then stairs inside.
Yeah, I remember Bob Siebert talking about that.
Yeah, that was Bob Siebert's house right next door. Mm-hmm. He was no, he was a city treasurer. I'm sorry.
And a teacher too.
He was a teacher
in
the school.
What's now the city hall.
The siren was here that they used to blow to call the volunteers to the fire when they needed them, and it sounded at noon every day. These doors were interesting because they were gone by the time I got here, and they had 2 3-panel doors, and you had to be careful. You opened the first door, and if you opened the first wing on this other door, it would hang up and you couldn't open it. You had to push this part out, and it was closed together, and then you could open the other part and you could get out. But
oh, you didn't want to get in too much of a rush.
Well, if you worked there, you knew it. But sometimes a volunteer would come in and want to help you, and they'd really make a mistake.
So when that particular facility was taken down, there was a time capsule, right?
1958. We that was totally inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
So the district bought the property on Edgemar and Malagra, and they built the fire station there. And when this one came down, your next picture is they had a time capsule put in there, and fortunately Eddie Girdler knew it was there. And this is Leo Girdler, Ed Greer, myself, Al Diaz, and Eddie Girdler. So when Les Bootman tore the building down, they dug up that time capsule. It was a float, a copper float from the old flush toilets. They used to use those because they'd last, and they put a lot of information there. The time capsule right now is in the Portola room in a showcase.
That's kind of a kick.
Yeah. Everybody wondered what it was, and nobody seemed to know. I guess, the younger people have never seen a copper float in a toilet.
Well, times do change.
There's a picture of the Pedro Point fire station. I think one of those people is Frenchie Bully, and his daughter still lives on Crespi.
Mm-hmm.
And Kitty Bully was very active. She was postmistress on Pedro Point for a while. And I don't recognize or know who the other 2 fellows are. And when the city incorporated and the Pedro Point was paying taxes into the fire district, they decided that they let us handle the protection.
Would this have been typical equipment for the 50s, say, or 60s?
That might even be pre-war.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's a Howe. They'd probably buy it surplus from some other department, but that's really an old timer. It's probably early 40s or late 30s. I don't know.
So what's the process for acquiring modern equipment? Nowadays is it all public funding, or are there
yes.
other?
Yes. You draw up the specifications for an engine that you need, and you go out to bid, and then the successful bidder gets to sell us the engine. American LaFrance did a very nice thing in the late 60s. They built what they called Pioneers. They were not custom made, they were standard production fire engines, and they were very inexpensive. The First National Bank would loan us money at 3%, because the federal government would reimburse them for the difference between, if they loan to municipalities, the difference between the 3% and what normal interest would be. So we got a very good deal on those. We bought 2 of those, and I think we ended up with about 4 of them altogether over a period of time. And then after that, specifying a fire engine is very complicated. They have to be right, and there's a lot of technical information on the pumps. And so what we would do is find a major department, a large department that drawn up the specifications and had an engine very close to what we needed, and we'd piggyback on that. We'd order an engine on that contract, and the supplier would certainly give us an engine. We did this with the next picture. There is a snorkel. We did that with the snorkel. I'd forgotten who the city was, but
This is on the occasion of the Danman's hayloft fire.
yeah. That looks, I don't think, that may not be the snorkel. That doesn't look, I guess it is. The snorkel was an open cab, and we piggybacked on someone else's specifications and bought that from Coast Apparatus in Oakdale.
Well, how long were you volunteer before they converted you to a paid job?
Well, about 2 years. I was commuting to the city and going to school at night, and the job came open. I was volunteering. The job came open. I thought, I'm tired of commuting to the city, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and being there by 5 or 6. And so I applied for the job, and I was successful, and I was selected. That made 6 people in the fire department and the chief.
And were you working out of the Milagro Road?
No, Milagro wasn't built yet.
Oh.
We were
still the Sharp Park location.
Yes, on
Santa
Palmetto
Maria.
in Santa Maria. They built the fire station on adobe as part of the contract with the builder, and we had to finish it off. And my first training in the fire department was hanging sheetrock inside the 2 wings on the. Oh, they had the center part, and then they built the 2 wings on the side. One was for the day room, and the other's for the dormitory and kitchen. And our first job was LDAs and Chuck Smith and myself. We hung sheetrock as part of our training.
And eventually you outgrew that place.
Yes, we did. And one of the things I'm very proud of, the concept was we needed a fire station in Lindemar, and that one was not totally inadequate. If you look at it, you can understand why. So I negotiated, talked with the city's approval, of course, for 150 feet off the back end of the Pillar of Fire property opposite the adobe. And when we built the station there, we built it with revenue sharing from the federal government. There was no city taxpayer money used. We managed to get it completed, and patterned it after. Well, no, that didn't work out. We were going to put an EOC in the bottom, but the funds dried up because I guess the Cold War warmed up, and it cooled off a little bit.
And EOC, Emergency
Operating Center.
Ah.
The one in Pleasanton, they had it underneath the apparatus room, and they had about a 3-foot concrete floor between the 2 to protect it from blast. And they got to the point where they would only pay for the part that was extra to protect you to provide protection from the blast. So that we decided that was not economically feasible, not to any advantage. And the council approved the station, and we built it there. And I'm really pleased with it, with that concept, because I think it serves us well today even.
Yeah, really.
It's if I say so myself, it's a real nice station. We had all the amenities. We had a training tower and a hose tower, because they don't use the towers to dry hose anymore because it's a synthetic hose and it doesn't rot. So
Oh, I see.
so it's a different concept. We only have a half hour, Jerry, and I don't know if I can cover everything.
Well, while we're still within our time limit, how about telling me a little about the cliff rescue activities? I think they originated here, did they not? Or for
Well,
the
I'm
North
sure
Coast?
that people had cliff rescues all over, but we were the only agency in town, in the area, and people would drive over or fall off or get stranded, and if you notice the little squad rescue, we had a cable on the front of that, and it would we'd lower over and we'd get a call and we'd go. And after a while, it got to be very expensive, so in time, and it's this one right here. There's a cable on the front, and that we would go down, lower the basket, do whatever we had to do, and come back up, and just a matter of fact. And it got to be expensive in time and money and salary, so we started charging the county for it. And eventually the county decided that they could do it themselves, and we got out of that business.
Out of totally out, or just out of the
Well, out of
coordination?
doing it for the county.
Yeah, yeah. Before helicopters, that was.
Oh, well, the helicopter couldn't get in close to the cliff because this was right up on the face of the cliff and down to the beach.
Oh,
and they
I
didn't
see.
have room.
Yeah.
We did a number of those surf rescues too, and the helicopter would come in, and once in a while we have Ken Donahue. I know he went out and they dropped the basket to pick him up, and he got a bloody nose out of it.
And
We-
it was swinging around against the cliff face.
In the early days, Jerry, we had more calls in our department here than Redwood City, San Mateo, some of the largest, South San Francisco, Dayton, and the larger departments, because we would respond to everything. We were what we called public service calls. We would go on emergency first aids and lockouts and just anything that happened, because we were the only agency here. People would go into town and leave their families here, and we were kind of Big Brother looking out for them. No, that's Big Brother. That's a bad term.
Yeah.
We were the guardians of the people in
Sure.
town.
Was it common in early days for there to be paramedics as part of the crew, or did
no.
they come in later on?
No, we had first aid classes and first aid training, and later on we developed the EMT. Another thing I'm very pleased with, after I got on the council, the county decided to. The ambulance company couldn't afford to put an ambulance close enough to meet their response times. And the fire department was usually first. So they agreed to pay the difference in salary between a regular fireman and a paramedic at a flat fixed rate for each department. And we would respond first, so they would have a paramedic on the scene in their response times. I was on that committee when it was first organized. There was a representative from each city on the JPA, and it's a classic organization, and it's known nationwide. We received an award for that, and I believe it's the Helen. I should have looked at it, but it's been quite a while. But we received national recognition for that program in the county, and I was a chairman of it until last November.
Oh, really? Well, good. So when did you become chief? More or less.
I've forgotten the exact date. I was a chief for 13 years.
Oh, good long time.
Yeah.
And when did you retired from that?
Yes, 83.
83.
So I guess it was 70. It was around 70, 71.
Sure, yeah. So then, once you were retired, you were looking for something to do, I guess?
Oh, yes. And I inadvertently went to the Cow Palace on the Right Stuff, the movie, and I just found it so fascinating that I went, for a while there, for about 10 years, I worked in almost every movie that was in San Francisco. Not a big star, just an extra. And Murder in the First was one they shot in Alcatraz. We were out there for a month, on and off. And one of the earlier 4th of Julys, we decided to put on a fireworks show for the kids, and we used Safe and Sane fireworks, and it was put on behind the Lindenmar Fire Station. And we thought, that's not very good, so we saw a magazine. We ordered the public display fireworks through the mail, and it came to the Wells Fargo in South San Francisco, and they wouldn't give us to us because nobody had a license. We didn't know we needed a license, so we hurried up and talked to the state fire marshal and got a license, and we fired the show, and it was so fascinating that I got my license. My first license was number 75 in the state of California, and then they changed the system, and I'm in 168. So I've done fireworks shows all over Northern California, up near Santa Rosa and Napa, and I've done the shows at Vallejo, shooting from Mare Island for the last 5 or 6 years.
The big public displays.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Most of the shows are done electrically now, and the show I was doing was one of the last hand-fired. That's kind of a thrill. We had a couple of people come up, and they were going to take pictures, and the first shell went off, they disappeared. We didn't see them again. They didn't do a show at Vallejo for the last 2 years because they're like everyone else. They're broke. And they had a sponsor for it, but anyway, well, that's enough about that.
Yeah.
And
well, somewhere along the line, you ran for city council too.
oh yeah. I didn't think it was appropriate when I first retired. I thought, I'm too close. But after a while, I thought, well, the first time I ran was 1988, and I thought I'd like to serve the city. I enjoy that. I used to go to all the city council meetings, even when they were in the basement of City Hall. Is now the finance department. They rotate at the Odsted Park and between Terra Nova and Oceana, and I'd go to all the planning commission meetings, particularly after I became chief, but before that I would attend just of interest. And I felt that I could serve the city, and I felt I had a knowledge of what was going on in the city and how things I thought should be run, and being kind of a fiscal conservative, I thought that's what the city needed. And
I remember your motto, the voice of reason.
Yeah, somebody said that to me, and I thought, well, that sounds reasonable. That sounds logical.
So for 12 years you were on the council. Were you mayor?
Yes.
A time or two, or how many times?
Well, we're talking politics now.
Yeah.
I was mayor in 1999, 2099 rather.
Yeah.
And after that, they didn't seem to think that my politics suit them, so they wouldn't.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm going to be personal here now for a minute. I think it's a mistake because the mayor is just a ceremonial thing. It doesn't really have any more influence than anybody else. But I was disappointed. And I was a senior council member on one occasion. I chaired the meeting, and everybody said I'd done good. So I enjoyed it, and I was, as I say, I was chair of the JPA for ALS, and a couple of the councilmen from San Mateo and other places said, you seem to be even-handed. You make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. So I'm bragging.
And it's a lot of work too.
And also, one thing I'm very interested, of great interest, is I was a ball dude for the Giants. You know, those old guys that are out in first base. And
that was the first time I'd heard that term when you mentioned it the other day. So what does that involve?
Well, you're just out there, and when the ball comes your way, you get it, and you take it out, put it away, or give it to the
foul
kid.
ball into the stands.
Yeah, not in the stands. Just if it rolls down, that's so the game can continue. They don't have to delay sending someone over.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, because time is important. They don't want to be distracted.
But you get to wear a uniform, and
yeah.
you're right.
Where else could a guy my age be on a major league ballpark on the field during a game and have Barry Bonds toss you a ball? When they hit a home run and they throw it back, and he'd throw it to me, and then I'd have to put it in my pocket because I couldn't give it to another kid. And most times either the opposing team would ask for the ball because it was the guy's first home run or some record home run.
Well, let's see. I was going to ask you about some of the memorable fires over the years in Pacifica? Were there any that particularly stand out for one reason or another?
No, they're all unfortunate. The ones that stand out in my mind the most are the ones where I would go to a fire by myself. And we went to a fire on Milagro one time, and it was a delayed alarm, and the fire was burning around the windows, and sometimes you wonder, what in the world am I doing here? Why can't I be delivering mail again? Grass fires were kind of interesting. They give you some concern because you need to control them because they can get out of hand. And
you seem to have a pretty good record here. I haven't noticed many fires in the recent years. When I first moved here in '92, it seemed like every 4th of July there'd be some grass fires.
Yeah. Of course, we've had dry weather the last few years, and that helps.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there used to be a lot of vacant lots in between the houses, and they would start. And I can't say this as a fact, but I have a feeling that a lot of it was started by kids just messing around.
Yeah, that would be normal, I suppose.
Because it's kind of hard for a field to start all by itself. Because it could be the sun reflecting on a piece of glass, but that's not very likely.
Yeah, that's pretty theoretical.
Yeah.
Let's Horsemen's Association. You were active in the Horsemen's Association. I'd like to hear a little about that.
I have always loved animals. My grandfather had a farm, 100-acre farm, just south of Lincoln Highway and US 41 in Schererville, Indiana. And I used to go spend my summers there, and I'd sit on the plow horses. And my dad was from Savannah, Tennessee, and we'd go down there on our vacation. And my cousin and I would take the mules out to pasture, and you had to watch those suckers because they'd scrape you off on a tree limb, and they were pretty cagey.
Smarter than they look, huh?
You know, and you had to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we didn't have saddles, and this was in the '30s, early '30s, and so I finally bought a horse. His name was High Pockets.
Uh-huh.
And
well, Cal, we're going to have to cover that in more detail later on if you have time to come on back, because we're just about out here now.
Hey, listen, you get old, you talk a lot. You want to get it all said before you die, so I'm happy to come back.
It's been fascinating to me. So, folks, if you want to learn more about the Pacifica Historical Society, you can write to us at Post Office Box 752, Pacifica, 94044. Visit our website at pacificahistory.org or call 650-359-5462. And look for our book around town. That's our show. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
From Liverpool, heave away, Santiano, around Cape Horn to Frisco Bay, way out in California.
And we're very fortunate today to have our member, David Herzl, here. He's been in Pacifica 5 years. He's a contractor, and he is a residential green building designer. He's been instrumental on working with our Green Building Policy Committee here in Pacifica, as well as being a member of the restoration team at the Little Brown Church. He's been interested in polar exploration for many, many years, and he is head of the Living History Program. He runs the Living History Program at the Maritime Museum.